Training to failure. This is something I get asked about a lot, so I wanted to spend a few minutes to address some key points here. But before I start, if you guys are liking the information, please like the video, please subscribe, and if you're interested in any sort of online coaching, consultations, or free programs, you can check out my website. I'll put a link in the description. Okay, so let's talk about training to failure. In terms of muscle growth, a set to failure is probably maximally stimulating, meaning it's probably the most you can do in a set to generate the greatest amount of muscle building stimulation. But there's a trade-off. It's also maximally exhausting. And of all the ways to do a set, taking a set to failure is going to produce the most fatigue. And this is something you have to consider because effective training is really about how you manage the training stimulus relative to the fatigue you generate from the actual training. And you have to do this over the course of your training week, obviously, with taking light days when you need it. But smart fatigue management really starts with how you actually do your sets. And here's what we know. You don't have to train to failure to build muscle. And on the whole, the research shows that there's pretty much no difference with training a few reps shy of failure and training all the way to failure in terms of how much muscle growth you can stimulate per set. Now, training close to failures, if you're a couple reps shy of failure, you're still crossing that intensity threshold that's going to be required to stimulate all the muscle fibers and deliver a full growth response from the set. We also know that training a few reps shy of failure doesn't generate nearly as much fatigue as training all the way to failure does. And this is a huge difference in real life because here's the reason. Excess fatigue, it's going to reduce how much high quality volume you can productively do over the workout and over the week. And the more high quality volume that you can actually perform and recover from, the better gains you're going to make. So it's not just about the growth stimulus on a set-by-set basis. It's about that for sure, but it's also about how many sets you can do over the course of the week. How many times can you cross that intensity threshold over the course of a week? So let me tie this all together. If we train too far from failure, we don't cross that intensity threshold required to get the full growth response, and we won't actively recruit all the muscle fibers and train them. So we're gonna be leaving some gains on the table. If we train to failure, we're getting the full growth response, that's good, but we're generating the most possible fatigue, and that's gonna limit our total weekly volume and therefore our gains. So ideally, we train close enough to failure so that we can stimulate all the muscle fibers and we get that full growth response, but we do so without generating so much fatigue that it limits the number of times we can do that over the course of the week. So something to note, up to this point, I've just been speaking very generally about most people most of the time. Now, there are definitely people that I work with that have really great work capacities and they can train to failure fine without it negatively affecting them. I've seen this plenty of times. So if that's you, you probably don't really have to worry about this that much. Another thing to consider, not every exercise taken to failure is equally fatiguing. There are some exercises that generate a ton of fatigue when they're taken to failure, and other exercises just don't have the same effect. So one final thing to consider, sets to failure can be useful still for other people who do find them very fatiguing, just because they serve as a way to sort of check yourself and make sure you're actually pushing yourself as close to failure as you think you are. So it's a good check. But in general, most of the time, for most people, keep most of your sets a few reps shy of failure, and that's gonna be the sweet spot. So that's gonna be it for this time. You guys keep training hard. If you have any questions, let me know, and I'll see you in the next video.